How many people did God kill in the Bible? Every good Christian must make a real effort to read the Bible and find out how violent can a good, graceful God ever be. Well, an author named Steve Wells decided to count all the killings in the Bible, and in his book, Drunk with Blood, he listed all the killings God did and the killings God instructed others to do. At the end of this video, God's killings that cannot be refuted are shown. The 158 stories from the Bible gave precise numbers and names of those killed and references. However, in cases like a war or a deadly flood, Steve Wells made reasonable estimates. Most Bible believers are ignorant or simply ignore these killings in the Bible by God. Most believers would stop believing in the Bible if they knew of God's killings. Steve Wells quoted the actual 158 stories from the Bible, using the King James Version. He referred to the Apocrypha only to help clarify some points at the end of this video. The Christian God in the Bible is a murderous monster and psychopath, making Genghis Khan, Hitler and Pol Pot like amateurs. Do you know that Satan, in the Bible, killed only 10 people in total when compared to the millions killed by God? So the next time you open up the Bible, be sure to note that every death in the Bible, every gruesome, horrific, senseless death happened due to your God. Well, most Bible believers either don't read the Bible or they ignore the parts that are disturbing. I hope with this video, all good Christians will be encouraged to check these facts, question, ascertain and comprehend these stories in the Bible for themselves as to how a compassionate, kind God can really do all these cruel, nasty, absurd killings of men, women, children and animals. So, let's not pretend that the Bible is a good book, much less a guidebook for moral and spiritual life. Is it possible to love a God with all your heart, soul and mind as Jesus commanded in Matthew 22? Perhaps, now, is the best time for all good Christians to read and understand how can a good, loving and compassionate God kill millions of innocent children, women, men and animals in the Bible. In the book of Deuteronomy 32, God said, "I am He, and there is no God with me. I kill, and I make alive, I torture, and I heal." This is no idle threat by God. God killed almost 3 million innocent children, women, men and animals in the Bible. In Steve Wells' book, he provides blow-by-blow details of how God murdered and slaughtered an estimated 25 million innocent children, women, men and animals from the 158 stories in the Bible. Who needs the devil with a monstrous God like this? Due to time constraints, this presentation will only highlight some stories, not all the 158 stories. Please read the Bible and Steve Wells' book and verify these facts for yourself. Story 1, in Genesis 7 verse 23, Noah's Ark. In the book of Genesis, God's first genocide occurs when God regretted and repented in making human beings. So, God killed human beings, animals and all living beings, his creations, except for Noah's family and the animals on the ark. We have to estimate numbers killed not stated in the Bible. In an earlier story in the Bible, Noah was drunk and laid naked in front of God and the public. He also cursed his son who covered his nakedness. So why did God save Noah? How did Noah learn to build a ship and get so many wood in the Middle East? The Egyptians needed thousands of people to build the pyramids, and yet Noah with his 3 sons managed to build this huge ship. How did Noah's family of 8 cared for all these wild animals?
Story 2, Genesis 14 verses 17 to 19. Story title: Abraham's war to rescue Lot. In the book of Genesis, Abraham and his nephew Lot were living in the same area, but Lot had so much stuff he moved away to a land called Sodom. After he arrived, there was a war between Sodom and Gomorrah and other cities, and Lot was captured. Abraham, with the help of more than 300 slaves, rescued Lot, and God helped Abraham slaughter the anti-Sodomites. The king of Sodom thanked God and Abraham for defeating the enemies. Precise number killed not known, so we have to use an estimate.
Story 3, Genesis 19. Title: Sodom and Gomorrah. In the book of Genesis, God tells Abraham he's going to kill all those wicked people in Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham pleads for the lives of the righteous people, especially the lives of his nephew, Lot, and his family. 2 of God's angels appearing as men went to Sodom and stayed at the house of Lot. Then, as the story goes, every man in Sodom comes to Lot's house and want to have sex with those angels who were staying with Lot. Instead of saying no, Lot offers the mob his 2 virgin daughters instead. But before anything can happen to the daughters, the 2 angels attacked all the men and made them all go blind. The angels told Lot and his family to run away from the city, which they did. Then out of nowhere God rains fire and brimstone upon Sodom and Gomorrah. Everyone in those cities died. Actual numbers killed not stated, we'll estimate. Story 4, Genesis 19, Lot's wife. In the book of Genesis, we have now come to God's 4th killings in the Bible, and it is the first of God's countable victims, as Lot and his family were running away from Sodom. Lot's wife looked back at the city and saw some of her friends and neighbors smashed and burned to death. God killed Lot's wife because she looked back at the city when she was told not to by the angels. This is a verified God killing. Story 5, Genesis 38, was wicked in the sight of the Lord. In the book of Genesis, this is the first of God's named murder victims. We know his name, his father's name, Judah, his mother's name, Shua, and his wife's name, Tamar. And we know that he was wicked in the sight of God, so God murdered him. The Bible does not tell us what did to be killed, but the Bible highlights a pervasive theme by implying was displeasing before God because he was a firstborn. God for some reasons dislikes firstborns, as many stories in the first 5 books of the Bible states. This is another verified God killing. Story 6, Genesis 38 verse 10, Onan spilled it on the ground. In the book of Genesis, Judah told his brother, Onan, to have sex with his dead brother's wife. Perhaps Judah wanted a grandchild. Onan had sex, but he pulled out and ejaculated it on the ground. God, who was watching the whole act, killed Onan for ejaculating outside the vagina of his dead brother's wife, another verified God killing. This Bible story is the basis of many Christian doctrines, including the condemnation of masturbation, homosexuality, and birth control. Story 7, Books of Exodus 7 and Wisdom 11. The first plague of Egypt, God forced the Egyptians to drink human blood. In the books of Exodus and Wisdom, God wanted to convince Pharaoh he's greater than all other gods and will free the Israelite slaves in Egypt. God told Moses to tell his brother Aaron to turn all the water in Egypt into blood, which is known as the first plague. So, God forced Egyptians to drink blood for 7 days, and since it is not possible to survive for long drinking blood, many Egyptians died. The Bible did not state the numbers killed, so we have to estimate. Story 8, Exodus 12, all firstborn Egyptian children. In the book of Exodus, God wanted to show everyone he had the power, so at midnight God killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the Pharaoh's firstborn to all the firstborns, human and animals. The Bible stated that when God was done with his killings, there wasn't a single home in Egypt that didn't have either a dead child or animal. This is a difficult passage to understand. The only way for Pharaoh to prevent this is to release the Israelites from bondage, but God prevented the Pharaoh to make this choice, so an untold numbers of children were killed by God, for a crime they did not commit, and the Pharaoh was stopped from making a choice by God's powers. We have to estimate the numbers killed, since none stated in the Bible. Story 9, Exodus 14. God took off their chariot wheels. In the book of Exodus, after that last mass murder where God killed every firstborn Egyptian child and animal in Egypt, the Pharaoh told Moses to get out of Egypt and take all the Israelites with him. Pharaoh told Moses to go. So, Moses rounded up all 3 million or so Israelites, their herds of cattle, silver, gold and clothes that they could steal from the Egyptians, and left town. In the movie The 10 Commandments, you may be familiar with the scene where the Red Sea was parted. God allowed Moses to part the sea so his people, the Israelites, can get through. But Pharaoh changed his mind and sent the Egyptian army after them. So God closed the water gap and he clogged up the wheels of 600 chariots, so everyone in the Egyptian army dies. 600 verified killings. Story 10, Exodus 32, God's followers kill their friends and family. In the book of Exodus, Moses was up on Mount Sinai getting the 10 Commandments from God, and he'd been gone for 40 days. His people began to wonder if he'd ever come back, so they asked Aaron to make some other idols of God for them. God told Moses' people to steal gold from the Egyptians. This was before God gave them the 10 Commandments, so they stole the gold and gave it to prophet Aaron, the brother of Moses, to make a golden calf idol. Upon his return, Moses saw the golden calf idol and got angry. Moses burned the golden calf idol and turned it into powder, mixed it in water, and made his people drink it. Moses wasn't satisfied, so told his people to grab their swords and kill their friends and family members. God wanted to kill everyone, but Moses talked him out of it. Imagine, Moses is a nicer person than God. The Bible states 3,000 people were killed to prove their loyalty to the true God. Story 11, Leviticus 10, Burning Aaron's sons for a strange fire. In the book of Leviticus, burning people alive is just God's way of having fun. In the Bible, God burned everyone in Sodom and Gomorrah. God burned the Israelites for complaining, God burned 250 men for burning incense, and God burned 102 more for asking Elijah to come down from his hill. In Leviticus, Aaron's 2 sons made a fire with incense. God was furious, so he burned Aaron's 2 sons to death. Moses told Aaron not to mourn his sons, or else God will kill him too. We have 2 verified murders, and apparently a very maniacal God. Story 12, Leviticus 24, a blasphemer is stoned to death. In the book of Leviticus, an unnamed son of an Israelite woman got in a shouting match with another man and said the name of the God in vain. So God told Moses to stone the chap to death, and that is one verified death. Story 13, Numbers 11. People complained, so God burned them to death. When you ask a Bible believer, is it wrong to burn people to death in the Bible? Most believers will refuse to answer the question. In the book of Numbers, some people complained, but we're not told why or issues, but God heard them complaining, and he burned them alive. That's the whole verse in the Bible. We've to estimate the numbers killed. Story 14, Numbers 14, 10 scouts are killed for their honest report. In the book of Numbers, Moses sends 12 spies from the 12 tribes of Israel to the land of Canaan. But when the spies returned, one of the spies, Caleb, said to Moses' people that they should conquer Canaan, but the 10 other spies disagreed because the people in Canaan were giants and stronger. So, Moses' people were very sad that they couldn't take over the land of Canaan, so they gave up on that fantasy. Later, they elected a new leader and returned to Egypt. Before the people could stone Caleb and Joshua to death, God showed up and wanted to kill all the people, but thankfully, Moses convinced God not to kill. God was still mad with the 10 spies for their honest reports about the land of Canaan. So he sent a plague and killed all 10. Verified killings. Story 15, Numbers 15. A man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day is stoned to death. In the book of Numbers, chapter 15, there was a man picking up sticks on the Sabbath. Moses asked God what to do, and God said, "Kill the man." So they stoned the man to death, one verified death. Why did God not try to convert the poor man by sending an angel to spare his life and show a good moral lesson instead of killing him? Story 16, Numbers 16, Korah, his companions, and their families are buried alive. In the book of Numbers, a man named Korah, his 2 friends, and 250 companions went up to Moses and accused him of being arrogant. Moses said, "Okay, let us see who God prefers." God threatened to kill everyone, and Moses again managed to calm God. God, Moses and Aaron came up with a test for Korah and his 2 friends. So God and Moses arrange a test. If Korah and his 2 friends die a normal, natural death, then God is not a friend of Moses. But if Korah and his 2 friends are buried alive, then Moses is God's special friend. The test proved to everyone that God is Moses' special friend since the earth swallowed Korah and his 2 friends. Verified killings. Story 17, Numbers 16, God burns 250 people to death for burning incense. In the book of Numbers' last story, Moses' original plan for dealing with Korah's rebellion was replaced by God's plan, and Korah and his 2 friends were buried alive. Now, Moses told Korah's 250 companions to burn incense before God, and when they agreed and burned incense, God burned all 250 companions of Korah alive. Verified killings. Story 18. Numbers 16. God kills 14,700 for complaining about God's killings. In the book of Numbers, the people who had witnessed the killing of Korah, his 2 friends, and the 250 other companions by God wanted to take it out on Moses. God tells Moses he's going to kill all. Then Moses told Aaron to burn some incense to try to stop God from killing everyone. But the incense burning had some effect, since only 14,700 died in the plague as quoted in the Bible. Verified killings. Sometimes God will stop killing if you burn incense, sometimes God will burn you to death. God works in mysterious ways. Story 19, Numbers 25:1-11 Phinehas double murder. In the book of Numbers, the men of Israel were sleeping with the women in the kingdom of Moab, and then they worshipped the women gods, and this made the real God mad. So he told Moses to kill them all. Before Moses can take any actions, one of the Israelite men entered their camp with a woman from another kingdom, and a man named Phinehas saw them having sex. He then used his javelin to kill them both. God was happy with Phinehas killing the couple. So instead of killing all, he decided to spare the children of the town, and killed 24,000 people with a plague. Verified killings. Story 20, Numbers 31, the Midianite Massacre. In the book of Numbers, the story begins with God telling Moses to take vengeance and kill the Midianites. So, Moses does what he's told and sends off 12,000 men led by Phinehas. First, they killed every male. Next, they killed the 5 kings, along with Balaam. In the Bible, Moses said, "Let's just kill the little boys and the male babies and the women who were not virgins, because they all deserve to die." The Bible says that when all the killing was done, only 32,000 virgin women were still alive. We've to estimate the numbers killed. I'm not sure if there's a moral lesson in this story and how they separated the virgins from the non-virgins. Story 21, Joshua 6, the Jericho Massacre. In the book of Joshua, this is a massacre that Christian children sing about. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, 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 and the walls came tumbling down. In the actual story, God told Joshua and his army to march around the city of Jericho for 7 days, and eventually the walls would collapse, and they did. And after that the army murdered every man, woman and child inside except for one prostitute and her family. After destroying Jericho, Joshua said that whoever rebuilt the city would be cursed by God and be forced to sacrifice his oldest and youngest sons. This prophecy was fulfilled when Hiel rebuilt Jericho. God made him lay the foundation with the body of his oldest son and set up the gates with his youngest son's body. We've to estimate the numbers killed. Story 22, Joshua 10, God stops the sun so Joshua can get his killing done in the daylight. In the book of Joshua, Joshua and the Israelites have been slaughtering or enslaving the people from every city. They killed everyone in Jericho and enslaved the people of Gibeon. Joshua and his army were still on their murder binge, but it's hard to kill without any light. So God stopped the sun from moving so that Joshua and his men would have more daylight to do more killings. Because of the extreme daylight savings, Joshua's army got to slaughter more people in 5 more cities. So in these killings, God got directly involved. He slaughtered people, cast down huge hailstones from heaven, and, at Joshua's request, stopped the sun from moving for 24 hours. If God stopped the sun from moving, then the sun moves around the earth, and it was this verse that got Galileo into so much trouble. We've to estimate the numbers killed. Story 23, Joshua 10, Joshua utterly destroyed all that breathed as God commanded trees. In the book of Joshua, God commanded Joshua to take over 7 cities and kill everyone inside and over the course of several verses. With God on his side, Joshua murders everyone in the 7 cities including their kings. We've to estimate the numbers killed. Story 24, Judges 3:8 delivers a message from God. In the book of Judges, the Israelites were worshipping false gods again, so God sold them into slavery to Eglon the king of Moab. The Israelites served as slaves for 18 years. After that, God sent aid to kill Eglon the king of Moab with a dagger until the insides of his belly came out. The mafia must have learned from God the art of killing. 1 verified death. Story 25, Gideon's story. In the book of Judges, the Israelites were worshipping false gods, so God sold them into slavery again. Gideon was farming when an angel of God told him to kill the Midianites, who were enslaving the Israelites. God joined in the three-way conversation with the angel and Gideon, but Gideon did not believe either of them and demanded a sign. So Gideon slaughtered a goat, and then the angel set it on fire like magic. Gideon was not convinced and needed another sign to prove that God wasn't lying to him. He put some wool on the ground and asked God to make it wet while keeping the ground dry. God passed that test. But no, Gideon is still not sure he can trust God, so he asks God to reverse the trick and make the ground wet and the wool dry. Now that God passed all of Gideon's tests, and with Gideon's trust in God, God tells Gideon to kill the Midianites. Gideon managed to only kill 22,000. The Bible says 10,000 Midianites were still alive and God wanted all dead. So Gideon went back and grabbed an army of men, but God told Gideon to have the soldiers go down to the river, and only those soldiers that got down on their knees like dogs are the natural-born killers he wanted. Those soldiers that use a cup or their hands to drink should be sent home. In the end, Gideon's 300 special soldiers didn't do the killings. It was God that did all the killings by forcing the Midianites to kill each other. God wants the credit for killing Midianites. There is more to the story involving decapitations and tortures, but I will spare you the details. The Bible says 120,000 men were killed by God, verified killings. Story 26. A city is massacred and 1,000 burned to death because of God's evil spirit. In the books of Judges, Gideon had 71 kids, and one of them, named Abimelech, decided he wanted to control the throne, so he killed all of his brothers except for one, Jotham, who got away. So Abimelech and Jotham fought for control of Israel, and Abimelech won, becoming Israel's first king. Then God decided to get involved by sending an evil spirit. The Bible is clear about evil spirits. They are either sent directly by God or their origin is unknown. The Bible never attributes evil spirits to Satan. God's evil spirit arrives and led everyone in the city of Shechem to revolt against Abimelech. Abimelech massacred all except 1,000 people who escaped and hid inside a tower. Then Abimelech set the tower on fire, and while the tower was burning, a woman inside dropped a giant stone from the tower, and it crushed Abimelech's head. Just before Abimelech died, he told a soldier near him to kill him, otherwise his legacy will be that he was killed by a woman. It's hard to keep score on this one, but I think God deserves credit for killing Abimelech, the 1,000 that were burned alive in the Tower of Shechem, and an unknown number of people in Abimelech's massacre of Shechem. We've to estimate the numbers killed. Story 27, Judges 12, 42,000 die for failing the Hibboleth test. In the books of Judges, after Jephthah finished killing and burning his daughter for God in helping him slaughter 20 Ammonite cities, some Ephraimites were angry that Jephthah did not invite them to slaughter the Ammonites. So Jephthah went to war with his men from Gilead and defeated the Ephraimites. After the battle, Jephthah posted guards at the Jordan River where some of the fleeing Ephraimites would have to cross, and told them to quiz the Ephraimites. So the Gileadites' guards would ask each fleeing Ephraimite to say, Shibboleth. Ephraimites cannot pronounce Shibboleth correctly. It was like asking George Bush to say, nuclear. The Ephraimites would mispronounce it, and they were killed. The Bible verifies that 42,000 men were killed this way. And since God ordered the killings and Jephthah is one of the heroes of God, we've to include this as God's killings. Story 28 Samuel 2 God killed Eli's sons and 34,000 Israelite soldiers. In the books of Samuel, there was a priest named Eli, who had two sons named Hophni and Phinehas. Like Eli, his sons were priests, but they were evil, they stole meat, they slept around. They were not godly men. Eli tried talking sense to his two sons, but they wouldn't listen. That made God angry. Before killing Eli's sons, God tormented Eli by sending 3 messages to Eli through the prophet Samuel saying, God is going to punish your future children for the sins of Hophni and Phinehas, and made it clear God will kill Eli's sons. So how did God kill Eli's sons? God made the Philistines kill Eli's sons and 34,000 Israelite soldiers. The Bible confirms that the Philistines killed 34,000 Israelites, Hophni and Phinehas, all verified killings. Story 29, God smote them with hemorrhoids in their private parts. In the books of Samuel, during the last battle the Philistines stole the Ark of the Covenant, a wooden chest that contained the tablets with the 10 Commandments, from the Israelites. The Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant containing the 10 Commandments tablets to the city of Ashdod and placed it next to the statue of their god named Dagon, but the statue of Dagon kept falling down and breaking. So God punished the people of Ashdod by killing a few of them and giving the survivors hemorrhoids. So the people of Ashdod sent the Ark of the Covenant to the city of Gath, and then God killed some people of Gath and gave the remaining hemorrhoids in their private parts. Then the Ark of the Covenant was sent to Ekron. God again killed most of the people in Ekron and gave the rest hemorrhoids. The Bible do not explain why God kills and gives people hemorrhoids and punishes them for having the 10 Commandments, the Ark of the Covenant, in their cities. The Bible does not say how many people God killed in Ashdod, Gath, and Ekron, so we have to estimate. Story 30, Samuel 6 to 50,070 killed for looking into the Ark of the Lord. In the books of Samuel, the Philistines were very annoyed with God killing their people and giving them hemorrhoids. So their priests told the Philistines to make 5 golden hemorrhoids and 5 golden mice as offerings and put the Ark of the Covenant containing the 10 Commandments on a cart pulled by 2 cows as offerings to God, and then let the cows go wherever they choose. The cows headed straight for Bethshemesh, and the people there looked inside the Ark of the Covenant, which it turns out, is forbidden. So God murdered all the 50,070 people in Bethshemesh. Verified killings. Story 31, Samuel 7 God thundered a great thunder upon the Philistines. In the books of Samuel, after God killed more than 50,000 people for looking into the Ark of the Covenant containing the 10 Commandments tablets, the Ark was moved to Kirjath-jearim and the people of Israel wanted the Ark back. Prophet Samuel advised the Israelites to get rid of their false gods and worship the Baal god, which they did. Then Samuel told the Israelites to come to the city of Mizpeh so I can pray for you, which they did. The Israelites asked Samuel to ask God to save them. So Samuel killed a baby lamb and burned it for God. As Samuel was offering the burnt offering to God, the Philistines attacked the Israelites. So God sent thunder to immobilize and discomfit the Philistines, so the Israelites killed the invading Philistines. Once again, the Bible doesn't say how many Philistines were killed, so we've to estimate. Story 32, Samuel 14 Jonathan's first slaughter. In the books of Samuel, the king of Israel had a son named Jonathan who wanted to prove his worth by murdering people. So Jonathan and the guy who carried his armor decided to go hunting for uncircumcised men. Their plan was to walk up to the Philistines and see their reactions. If the Philistines start talking trash, Jonathan and his friend are going to fight them because that's clearly a sign from God. So when the Philistines talked trash, Jonathan killed the 20 Philistines in what the Bible verifies as Jonathan's first slaughter. Story 33. The Amalekite Genocide. In the books of Samuel, you only need to read the first 3 verses from 1 to 15 to know for sure that the God of the Bible is evil. Prophet Samuel speaks here for God and tells Saul, the king of Israel, that they need to murder all the Amalekites and all their animals. So Saul sends an army of 210,000 soldiers to murder every man, woman, child, including babies and animals in the tribe, everyone except for Agag, the king of the Amalekites, and a few animals. Prophet Samuel regretted making Saul the king, and God was very angry with King Saul for not killing King Agag. We've to estimate 2 numbers killed. Story 34. Samuel hacks Agag to death before God. In the books of Samuel's last story, King Saul ruined God's orders by not killing King Agag and some animals. After that genocide, the prophet Samuel was very upset, so he killed and hacked King Agag to pieces before God. Prophet Samuel was a monster too, but to God and Bible believers, he is a hero, a verified killing. Story 34. Samuel 15. Samuel hacks Agag to death before God. In the books of Samuel's last story, King Saul ruined God's orders by not killing King Agag and some animals. After that genocide, the prophet Samuel was very upset, so he killed and hacked King Agag to pieces before God. Prophet Samuel was a monster too, but to God and Bible believers, he is a hero, a verified killing.
Story 35. Samuel 17. In the valley of Elah Goliath. In the books of Samuel, Saul, the king of Israel, did not complete the genocide, and prophet Samuel had to kill King Agag in the last story. God and the prophet Samuel were still very upset. So God and prophet Samuel selected David because David has the Spirit of God with him for life. This story is about David from the Israelites and Philistines. Goliath. Goliath said to the Israelites, "Send me your best fighter, and if I win, all the Israelites will become our servants. If you, David, wins, I will become your servant." David was given a sword, a helmet, and some armor to defend, but he swapped it for a slingshot and some stones. David won with one perfect shot to Goliath's forehead that killed Goliath. David chopped off Goliath's head using Goliath's own sword and brought the severed head like a trophy to Jerusalem. There is a completely different Bible story about Goliath's death in Samuel 21 that says Elhanan killed Goliath, but we'll ignore that story and count this as one verified killing. Story 36. Samuel 25. God killed Nabal. In the books of Samuel, David was out in the wilderness with some of his friends, when he heard about a Nabal, a rich man. David sent 10 of his friends to Nabal and demanded Nabal give them whatever he owned, but Nabal refused. Meanwhile, Nabal's wife, Abigail, visited David to calm him with lots of food and wine. Once David stopped being angry, Nabal had a party to celebrate, but 10 days later, God killed Nabal. No reasons given, and David celebrated by taking Nabal's wife and all Nabal's belongings. So, David got 2 wives, Abigail and Ahinoam, along with 5 other damsels, one verified killing. Story 37, Samuel 30. David spends the day killing Amalekites. In the books of Samuel, one day when David was hanging out with his Philistines friends, the Amalekites attacked their town. Yes, the Amalekites, the people God hates most, as stated in the Bible, Exodus 17, Deuteronomy 25, and Samuel 15. God ordered the Israelites to kill all the Amalekites twice in the Bible. Interestingly, in this story, the Amalekites did not kill the Philistines but carried away men, women, children and animals. When David and his friends returned home and saw the town empty of people and animals, David asked God what he should do. And God said David needed to go and kill all the Amalekites. So David with his 400 soldiers killed all the Amalekites except for 400 who got away on the backs of their camels, and David got his 2 wives back and all their stuffs. The text does not say how many Amalekites were killed, so we have to estimate. Story 38, Samuel 6 and Chronicles 13. God killed Uzzah. In the books of Samuel and Chronicles, remember the Ark of the Covenant, the chest containing the 10 Commandments tablets. The Ark of the Covenant had caused lots of trouble, so David and his army were taking the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem, when one of the animals is tripped and the Ark started to fall off the animal. A man named Uzzah tried to prevent the Ark from falling and breaking, but God was angry because Uzzah touched the Ark of the Covenant, and that's not allowed. So God killed Uzzah, one verified killing. Story 39, Samuel 12. God slowly kills a baby. In the books of Samuel, there is a famous story about David seeing a naked Bathsheba taking a bath and having sex with her. She becomes pregnant with David's child, and since she was already married to a man named Uriah, David sends her husband, Uriah, to war to be killed. Uriah died in the war, and God was displeased with David for killing Uriah and taking his wife. But he forgives David, but God showed his displeasure by ordering David's wives to be raped by David's own son, Absalom, while everyone else watches. God was still not satisfied, so he decided to kill David's new baby. First, God made the baby sick, so David pleaded with God to save the baby, but God decided to let the baby suffer for a full week before God killed the baby. Later, David worshipped the same God who killed his son and impregnated Bathsheba again. Soon he had another son, named Solomon, but this time, God loved Solomon. So, one verified killing. Story 40, Samuel 21. 7 sons of Saul are hung up before the Lord. In the books of Samuel, the Bible does not say much about this killing. At some point, God caused a 3-year famine on Israel in order to punish Saul for killing the Gibeonites. David asked the Gibeonites if there was anything he could do to make God stop starving the Israelites. The Gibeonites wanted revenge and asked David to give them Saul's 7 sons so they could hang them up before God. David agreed, so he captured Saul's 2 sons and 5 grandsons, and the Gibeonites hanged all of them, and this made God happy and stopped starving the Israelites to death by ending the famine. The Bible verifies Saul's 2 sons and 5 grandsons killed, but do not say how many Israelites were starved to death by God, so we have to estimate.
Story 41, Kings 13. A tale of 2 prophets. In the book of Kings, there was an old prophet whose name we don't know, who saw another prophet sitting under a tree. The first prophet invited the second over for dinner, but the second prophet said, "No, I can't go, because I promised God I would not eat or drink." And The first prophet said, "Don't worry. I'm a prophet and a man of God too, and an angel told me that I should give you bread and water, which was a lie." So the second prophet went to the first prophet's house, had bread and water, and God was furious that the second prophet broke the rules by eating and drinking. So when the second prophet was on his way home, a lion ate him. 1. Verified death. I think the moral is, never believe anything anyone else tells you, unless God tells you directly. Story 42, Kings 14. Jeroboam's son, God kills another child. In the book of Kings, the story begins with a sick child, Abijah the son of King Jeroboam. Jeroboam was worried about his son and told his wife to go ask a blind prophet, Ahijah, if his son will get better. He also told her to go in disguise. Meanwhile, God knew what was going on, and he told the blind prophet Ahijah that the queen in disguise will be visiting her soon. So when Jeroboam's wife arrived and met the blind prophet Ahijah, he told her the bad news that God is furious with her husband and God will kill all her sons and destroy her family, and her sick child will die upon her return home. When Jeroboam's wife returned home, God killed the sick boy the moment the mother entered his room. 1. Verified killing.
Story 43, Kings 15. Jeroboam's family. In the book of Kings, in the last story, the blind prophet God warned Jeroboam's wife that God is going to kill Jeroboam's entire family. God commanded Baasha to kill Jeroboam's whole family, which he did. The Bible did not state the number of people killed, so let's estimate.
Story 44, Kings 20. God killed Ahab for not killing a captured king. In the book of Kings, last chapter, God sent a lion to kill a man for not hitting and scarring a prophet when instructed. In this story, another man was willingly to hit and scar the face of the prophet when ordered. The prophet needed the scar and ashes to disguise his face for his meeting with King Ahab. When King Ahab met the disguised prophet, he said he allowed a prisoner to escape, not recognizing the prophet. The prophet removed his disguise and informed him that God was going to kill King Ahab and his family for letting the Syrian king Ben-Hadad live. God arranged for King Ahab to be killed while fighting the Syrians. Story 45, Kings 1. God burned 102 men to death for asking Elijah to come down from his hill. In the book of Kings, King Ahaziah of Israel became ill, so he sent some messengers to ask Baal-zebub, a false god, if he'll recover. The prophet Elijah sent a message to Ahaziah informing the king that he's in big trouble for seeking a false god. So, the king sent his captain and 50 soldiers and commanded Elijah, who was living at the top of a hill, to meet the king. Elijah said, "I'm a prophet and God will send down fire from above and burn all of you to death." And God sent fire and burned the captain and 50 soldiers to death. King Ahaziah was furious when he heard the death of his captain and soldiers. So, he sent another one of his captain and another 50 soldiers to get Elijah to meet the king, and again God sent another fire and burned to death the captain and the 50 soldiers. King Ahaziah sent another captain and 50 soldiers, but this time, the captain pleaded on his knees to Elijah not to burn him and his soldiers to death. This time God's angel instructed Elijah to go and meet King Ahaziah. What's the moral of this story? Story 46, Kings and Chronicles. God killed Ahaziah for asking the wrong god. In the books of Kings and Chronicles and the story, God burned 102 soldiers to death in total for asking Elijah to come down from his hill. The first 2 times, the captains commanded Elijah, and God burned them all to death. The third time the captain begged Elijah to come down from his hill to meet the king, so Elijah obliged. In the books of Kings, the reason for King Ahaziah wanting Elijah to come down from his hill is to ask Elijah to plead with God so he can recover from his illness. In the last story, King Ahaziah of Israel was sick and prayed to Baalzebub, a false god. So the real God killed the king, one verified killing.
Story 47. Kings 2. God sent 2 bears to rip apart 42 boys for making fun of a prophet's bald head. This story in the books of Kings is a classic. After Elijah went to heaven, his disciple Elisha took over and started performing some miracles like a good prophet in a town called Bethel when 42 little boys made fun of his bald head. Prophet Elisha cursed the boys in the name of God, and suddenly 2 bears came out of the woods and devoured the 42 boys for making fun of him. The Bible doesn't say how Elisha reacted to the killings of the 42 little boys, verified deaths.
Story 48, Kings 9. Jehoram of Israel. In the books of Kings, remember King Ahab whom God killed in the last story. Now, God commanded Jehu the king of Israel to murder the rest of King Ahab's family the same way God had executed Jeroboam and Baasha's families. God wanted Ahab's wife, Jezebel, not just killed, but fed to the dogs, so that there would be nothing left of her body to bury. King Jehu took off in his chariot to do God's killings. He saw Ahab's son, Jehoram, and shot him using a bow and arrow that went through his heart and threw his dead body into the fields of Naboth. One verified killing. Story 49 to 2 Kings 9:33-37 Jezebel. In the books of Kings, next on God's hit list for Jehu is Jezebel. So he drove his chariot over to her house. When she heard Jehu was coming, she put on her makeup and sat by the window. Jehu commanded, and her eunuchs threw her out of the window, and Jehu's horses trampled her body till she was dead. Then Jehu went off to eat and drink and instructed his soldiers to bury the cursed woman, but all the soldiers found was her skull, feet, and the palms of her hands, because the dogs had eaten just about all of her body as God commanded. One verified killing. Story 50 to 2 Kings Ahab's sons, 70 heads in 2 heaps. In the books of Kings, Jehu the king of Israel was on God's mission to kill King Ahab's entire family. In the last stories, first he killed one of Ahab's sons, Jehoram, then he killed Ahab's wife, Jezebel. Now it was time to kill the rest of Ahab's family, his 70 sons. Jehu wrote letters to the rulers of Jezreel challenging them for Ahab's sons and ordered the rulers to behead Ahab's 70 sons and the severed heads to be delivered to Jehu the next morning. Jehu told the people he did the killings as per God's instructions. 70 verified killings.
Story 51. Ahab's hometown family, friends and priests. In the books of Kings, in God's last killing, the rulers of Jezreel sent Jehu the heads of Ahab's sons, all 70 heads. But his mission and orders from God when he was made king was to kill all the people close to Ahab. So Jehu went to Ahab's hometown Jezreel in search of all Ahab's family, friends, and priests and killed them all. The text does not say how many of Ahab's family and friends were killed in Jezreel, so we have to estimate.
Story 52 Just another holy war. In the books of Chronicles, there's a long and boring genealogy. In the beginning of 1 Chronicles inform us that there were 44,760 descendants of Reuben, and they all fought in a war against the Hagarites. Reuben's men requested God for help and God agreed to be on their side, and killed the Hagarites. Once you have God on your side in a holy war, killing people and winning are guaranteed. But how many were killed in this holy war of God? It's a shame the Bible does not tell us, but says 50,000 camels, 250,000 sheep, and 100,000 slaves were looted from the Hagarites. We have to estimate the number of people killed. Story 53. God killed 500,000 Israelite soldiers. In the books of Chronicles, at one point we're told of a war between King Abijah of Judah and Jeroboam of Israel. King Abijah had 400,000 men while Jeroboam had 800,000. King Abijah gave a speech to 1.2 million men saying God's on his side, and Jeroboam's men attacked and ambushed them. But since King Abijah has God on his side, the Bible confirms that God killed Jeroboam 500,000 people. Sometimes God has to kill 500,000 of his favorite people just to make a point of some kind. I'm not sure what the point was in this case, but that's beside the point. 500,000 Israelite soldiers killed, all verified deaths by God. Story 54. Chronicles 13. God killed 1,000,000 Ethiopians. In the books of Chronicles, in the killing before last, God killed 500,000 Israelites. Now in this story God killed 1,000,000 Ethiopians. God got involved in this killing because he liked Asa, the king of Judah. King Asa was good in the eyes of God because he destroys the temples of other gods and forbids the worship of other gods and drove away the Sodomites from their land. One day, Zerah the Ethiopian and an army of 1,000,000 men attacked Judah, Asa, and his people. Asa asked God for help, and God killed all 1,000,000 Ethiopians in a single day. This was the largest, single, God-assisted killings in the Bible. 1,000,000 verified deaths. Story 55. Chronicles 36. The fall of Jerusalem. In the book of Chronicles, there was a king named Zedekiah, whom God hated. He wasn't humble, he was a rebel. Zedekiah was the final king of Judah who angered God so much that God sent the Babylonians to slaughter the people of Jerusalem. Young men, little girls, old people, all in Jerusalem were killed without any exceptions, but a few escaped and surrendered to Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Let's estimate, since the Bible did not indicate the numbers killed.
Story 56. Job 1. God and Satan killed Job's children and slaves. In the book of Job, finally, we get to a killing that involves Satan. This is the famous story of Job and is the only killing in the Bible that Satan and God worked as a team. Job was a good man with 10 kids, many slaves and many animals. The Bible says he was perfect although he had slaves. One day God met Satan and inquired if he'd seen Job, the man who is perfect, upright and God-fearing, and Satan replied that Job is perfect because God gave him everything, Job will curse you, God, if you take away all Job's belongings. So God told Satan to go to earth and remove everything good from Job's life, but don't hurt Job. So that's what Satan did. First he sent a messenger to tell Job that all of his slaves were killed, then another messenger stopped by to say to Job that all his sheep are dead, then a third messenger stopped by to tell Job that his children were all inside a house when strong winds demolished their house and his children were killed. We know in God's deal with Satan it was God and Satan that killed Job's 7 sons and 3 daughters. And also all Job's slaves were killed. Job did not blame God, just as God had predicted. The Bible doesn't say how many were killed, so we will estimate.
Story 57. Jeremiah 28. Hananiah. In the book of Jeremiah, whenever 2 prophets get together in the Bible, you can be pretty sure that one of them will soon be killed by God. Jeremiah and Hananiah are both prophets, but Hananiah is a false prophet. The trouble starts when Hananiah prophesies good news for the people of Judah. God was going to bring the people of Judah back home because Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon will be defeated. But later God told Jeremiah to tell Hananiah that he wants everyone to serve the king of Babylon, even the animals. And then God said to Hananiah, I'm going to kill you sometime this year. So Hananiah the prophet died the same year in the 7th month, one verified killing. Story 58 Ezekiel 24, Ezekiel's wife. In the book of Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel and his wife lived during the Babylonian captivity, and at one point God told Ezekiel that the king of Babylon was going to attack Jerusalem, and he urged Ezekiel to tell the people a story, a parable. Fearing God, he told the people about a weird kind of soup with human body parts, blood, bones. Then God said to Ezekiel, I'm going to kill your wife and you're not allowed to cry or mourn. God killed Ezekiel's wife. God and Ezekiel explained to everyone in Israel that God will kill their sons and daughters, and no one is allowed to mourn after they die, just like Ezekiel was not permitted to mourn his wife's death. I don't know what the moral of this story. One verified killing.
Story 59. Judith is blessed above all women. In the book of Judith's apocryphal chapter of Daniel, there's Judith, a beautiful widow who supposedly helped save Israel from oppression. Judith asked God for help to kill her enemies, and God did that by making her able to seduce and murder the general. God made Judith even more beautiful, so she could seduce and murder the Assyrian general Holofernes. One day, the Assyrian general got drunk and fell asleep on his bed, and Judith beheaded him. The Bible said, because of Judith's actions, she should be blessed above all women. So, who is the most blessed woman in the Bible? Mary Jael or Judith? Mary and Jael are blessed among women, but Judith is blessed above all women. So Judith wins, one verified killing.
Story 60 Judith 15 The Judith Massacre. In the book of Judith, when Judith returned to the Israelites, she took Holofernes' head and told everyone that no sex was involved in this killing. Judith told the Israelites to hang Holofernes' head on the wall and let the Assyrians see the headless body of Holofernes. When the Assyrians saw Holofernes' head on the wall, they all ran away. Judith told the Israelites to attack and kill the running Assyrians, and God, too, helped kill the fleeing Assyrian army soldiers. Since the text does not say how many were killed, we have to estimate. Story 61 Maccabees 1 God helped Judah's Maccabees. In the books of the Maccabees, after Mattathias died, his son, Judah's Maccabees, replaced him as the leader of the Jewish terrorists. Judas killed Apollonius and many of his soldiers, and took the sword of Apollonius. When Seren, the captain of the Syrian large army, attacked Judah's smaller army, Judas told his soldiers that the success in war depends not on numbers of men, but on God. And, since God is on their side, they went to war without any weapons. We're told they won the war because God did all the killings for them. We have to estimate on the numbers killed. Story 62 The Hanukkah Killings, Maccabees 4. In the books of the Maccabees, a year after that last battle took place where God slaughtered 3,000 people, Lysias attacked Judah with an army of 60,000 people. Judah's Maccabees always had God on his side, but how was his tiny army going to beat this large one? Again he asked God for help and to strike Lysias' army with fear and kill all Lysias' men. We're told God killed 5,000 of the Lysias' men, the rest retreated. In the meanwhile, Judas Maccabeus and his men decided to go clean and repair the temples, killed some animals and offered it to God. This is actually what inspired the 8 days of Hanukkah, which angered the Gentiles who decided to attack the Jews, which got God and Judas Maccabeus in a killing mood once again. So Judas Maccabeus slaughtered the children of Esau, burned to death the children of Ben, and killed the children of Ammon. Ultimately, God helped Judas kill the Gentiles because God likes the Jewish people more than other people. So, we have 5,000 soldiers verify killings in Lysias' army and about 10,000 estimated killings from the great slaughter of the children of Esau, Ben and Ammon.
Story 63. Nicanor's army, the Almighty being their helper, they slew above 9,000 men. In the second book of Maccabees, we learn that King Philip tried to exterminate all the Jews with the help of the generals Nicanor and Gorgias and 20,000 soldiers. But Judas Maccabeus heard of the plot, so he put together an army of 7,000 men to fight against the enemy's 20,000 soldiers. Reminding his soldiers how with God on their side they had previously killed Sennacherib's 185,000 sleeping soldiers and slayed 120,000 Galatians. After Judas concluded his speech by reading Esdras' holy book, God and his soldiers went off to fight the Nicanor's 20,000 soldiers. They killed above 9,000 men in Nicanor's army, another 20,000 men in the army of Timotheus and Bacchides. They also killed Philauches and Callisthenes. So the total verified killings in this episode is 147,002.
Story 64. 5 heavenly horsemen cast darts and fireballs at the enemy. Maccabees 8. In the books of Maccabees, Timotheus and his army were battling with Judas Maccabeus' army, and we know from the previous story that God is on the side of Judas Maccabeus. So the Bible says that 5 men on horses came down from heaven, threw darts and fireballs against Timotheus's army and blinded them. We're told the body count was 20,500 soldiers and 600 horsemen. And, the story continues, some of Timotheus' soldiers escaped and were swearing and blaspheming. When Judah's men heard they killed the blasphemers, then they killed Timotheus, his brother Shaeas, and a soldier named Apollophanes. So, 21,100 men were killed in battle and 3 others with names were killed. All verified killings. Story 65. God sent wasps to slowly destroy people. Wisdom 12. Early on in the Old Testament, God promised to send wasps to help the Israelites defeat their enemies. However, God never actually did before, but now in the Book of Wisdom, another apocryphal text, God confirms sending the wasps to destroy the people slowly but surely. We have to estimate the numbers killed. Story 66. Ananias and Sapphira. Acts 5. Finally, we are in the New Testament. In the book of Acts, the married couple Ananias and Sapphira sold their land and gave lots of the proceeds to the apostles. The percentage donated wasn't enough to satisfy the apostle Peter, who was angered and said Ananias' heart was filled by Satan because he was somehow lying to God. Before Ananias could get a single word out, he fell over dead. Then Apostle Peter asked Sapphira if they had sold the land for a certain amount of money. When she said yes, Peter asked her why she and her dead husband had tempted the Spirit of the Lord and that she would be joining her dead husband soon. She died immediately. Another, verified killing. Story 67. Herod Agrippa. In the book of Acts, King Herod once gave a speech that was so good the people he ruled said he was like a god, and this angered God, who wasn't receiving the credit he wanted. So God sent an angel down to earth to murder King Herod, and after that God fed Herod's body to the worms. Verified killing. Story 68. Jesus. Roman 8. In the book of Romans, it's hard to imagine something worse than a father planning and killing his own son to stop billions of people from torture for something someone else did thousands of years before. God killed Jesus, his son, who was also him. This verified death can be attributed to God because it was all part of his plan. Somehow, we're told killing his son will benefit us. Verified killing. Steve Wells counted all the killings God did in the Bible and the killings God instructed others to do, and documented all these killings in his book, Drunk with Blood. According to the figures given in the Bible, God killed 2,821,364 innocent men, women and children, excluding animals. Furthermore, in cases of wars, floods, etc., Steve Wells made reasonable estimates of 25 million innocent men, women and children killed by God, since no figures were available in the Bible. So, is the God in the Bible a good, loving and compassionate God?